Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're attempting to navigate a real bureaucratic maze, maybe one of the most stressful ones imaginable. We're talking about the October 2025 government shutdown, specifically how it impacts federal workers' injury claims, OWCP. You know, for millions, this is just a chaotic mess. You've got accepted employees, think TSA, BOP officers, they legally have to work, but without a paycheck. Then you've got others furloughed, maybe huge numbers at places like the IRS, just sent home. So the questions about, job security, basic pay, they're just overwhelming. Our mission today is really laser focused. What actually happens to your federal workers' compensation, OWCP, if you get injured during this whole appropriations mess?
Yeah, that is the absolute key question. And the answer is, well, surprisingly stable in some ways, but also just full of these administrative traps.
Yeah.
I think the main thing we found, looking at the sources, is that the core OWCP function itself, it's actually designated as essential.
Essential, okay.
Right. So unlike, almost every other discretionary government service, the system that manages your injury claim is, well, largely up and running. And understanding that stability is just crucial for anyone listening.
Okay, let's dig into that stability a bit. When you say largely operational, what does that actually mean on the ground? Like staffing, claim speed? Are we talking a skeleton crew or what?
No, it's actually much closer to a nearly full workforce, at least for those core functions. Based on the Department of Labor's own contingency plans, out of about 1,340 total OWCP employees, something like 1,182 are retained. They stay on the job.
Wow, that many.
Yeah, only 158 are furloughed. And this huge retention rate, it's specifically to make sure claim adjudication and benefit payments keep going without interruption. So claims examiners are still there, docketing cases, reviewing them.
And the reason they can keep the lights on, and maybe more importantly, keep the checks flowing, it isn't just like a political whim, right?
Yeah.
There's a specific funding reason.
Precisely. And this is really the bedrock, the security of the whole system here. Benefits under FECA, that's the Federal Employees Compensation Act, they're paid out of the Employees Compensation Fund.
Okay.
Think of it like a big insurance trust account. It exists totally outside the annual budget fight up on Capitol Hill.
Ah, right.
It's what they call a permanent indefinite appropriation. Its money doesn't depend on Congress approving the budget this year. And the DOL estimates this fund can keep paying out wage loss, medical benefits, everything for several months, even if this shutdown drags on.
Okay, that is probably the most critical takeaway for you, the listener, right there. It means if you have an existing injury claim or you're getting ongoing comp checks, those should not stop, no matter how long the government shutdown lasts. That fundamental structure, it's secure because the money is basically already set aside.
Exactly. That's the bottom line for existing claims.
All right, so that's great for people already in the system, but what about the workers who are on the job now? Especially those accepted folks who might get hurt, say, today. Can they still file a new claim if they get injured during the shutdown?
Yes, absolutely. And they really must. The electronic filing system, it's called e-com, that's still operational. It's accessible.
Right.
That's where you submit your initial claim forms online, the CA1 if it's a traumatic injury like a fall, or the CA2 for an occupational illness that develops over time. And those retained claims examiners, they're still working, still docketing these new cases as they come in.
Okay, now here's where it gets, well, tricky, right? This is where that administrative hurdle kicks in, especially for those accepted workers, like the TSA officers still screening bags. We need to talk about continuation of pay or COP.
Yes, that's the big financial vulnerability here. Normally, right, if you have a traumatic injury that's a CA1 claim, you're entitled to COP. That's up to 45 days of your regular full salary paid directly by your agency.
Right, like sick leave, almost.
Sort of, yeah. But here's the problem. Because agencies like TSA or the Bureau of Prisons, BOP, they're funded by these appropriations that have lapsed. They might actually not have the legal authority to cut that COP check right now. Their operating budget is frozen.
So they literally can't pay it, even if they wanted to.
They may not be able to, legally. And that creates this, well, frankly, terrifying scenario for an employee who's already working without pay, and now they're injured too. Do they just wait potentially for weeks for the shutdown to end just to get that first COP payment? It's a real bind.
Okay, wait. But isn't there an alternative? I thought the OPM guidance mentioned something, like you could file for OWCP wage loss instead, using a Form CA7.
Yes, that's the crucial alternative. OPM guidance does confirm if the agency cannot pay COP because of the funding lapse, the injured employee can file for OWCP wage loss compensation using that CA7 form, basically in lieu of COP.
Okay. So OWCP steps in.
OWCP steps in to pay the disability pay directly from that secure FECA fund we talked about.
But hold on, that's disability pay, right? Not full salary. So that relief valve means taking a pay cut, doesn't it?
That is absolutely correct. And it really highlights a kind of hidden cost of the shutdown for injured workers. If you opt for the CA7 for wage loss because your agency can't issue COP, yes, you're getting disability pay. That's typically 2/3 of your regular salary if you have no dependents, or 3/4 if you do have dependents.
So definitely less than your full COP salary.
Definitely less.
Yeah.
It's a safety net for sure, but it is a pay cut compared to what you'd expect with COP under normal circumstances. But, for many workers in this situation, the immediate benefit probably outweighs that temporary cost. Because the OWCP fund is secure, it guarantees you actually receive some income pretty quickly during the shutdown,
Yeah.
which is better than getting zero from an agency that's legally blocked from paying you anything.
Right. Zero versus something, even if it's less.
Exactly. But remember, you have to have filed that initial injury claim first, the CA1 or CA2, that has to be on file before you can even access that CA7 process for wage loss.
Okay, so the system ensures survival, maybe, but not necessarily financial comfort during that initial period. It shifts the payment burden to the stable FECA fund, but you trade full salary for faster but reduced disability pay. That's a really vital distinction for anyone injured right now.
It really is.
All right, let's shift gears a bit. What about people already getting benefits, or maybe they're in the middle of treatment, physical therapy, rehab, that kind of thing? Are their medical authorizations suddenly going to freeze up? Is the care going to stop?
No, there shouldn't be any freeze there. Your ongoing wage loss checks are secure, as we said. And critically, the medical care side of things looks pretty robust too. Medical authorizations, the processing of bills, payments to doctors and hospitals, that's handled by designated OWCP contractors. ACS is one name that comes up in the source material.
Okay, so private contractors.
Right. And they're operating under existing agreements that are already funded and secure. Absolutely. The advice is crystal clear. Continue attending all your prescribed medical appointments. Keep up with your treatments. OWCP's automated systems are also being maintained. That includes things like the claimant query system, where you can check your case status online, and e-com for filing. So the basic mechanics of getting care authorized and paid for, those should remain sound.
Okay, that's reassuring. But if the core money and the processing functions are pretty stable, where are people going to feel the pain? Where should listeners expect the biggest headaches or friction points because of the shutdown?
The friction is almost entirely going to be in, let's say, personalized communication and due process. While those essential claims examiners are still working, the support staff, the people who usually answer phones, handle general paperwork, provide status updates. Many of them have been furloughed.
Ah, okay, so getting a hold of someone.
Exactly. That leads to a major limitation. The OWCP customer service phone lines at the district offices, they're going to be largely unstaffed.
Yeah.
You'll likely find it very, very difficult, maybe impossible, to reach a live person to discuss, specific questions about your case or get personalized updates.
So you're stuck with the automated systems.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Which can be incredibly frustrating if you're trying to navigate a complex issue with a new claim or maybe figure out why something was denied.
And speaking of denials, you mentioned due process. There's a bigger issue there, too, isn't there, about appealing decisions?
Yes, and this is a really profound hit to claimant rights during the shutdown. It's a big deal. The Employees' Compensation Appeals Board, or ECDA, that's basically the higher court for challenging OWCP decisions you disagree with, has completely ceased operations. It's shut down.
Completely. Wow.
Completely. It's not considered essential. So if you receive a decision during this shutdown, maybe it denies your benefits, cuts your compensation, stops your medical care, you have no immediate recourse.
So you just wait.
You wait. Expect a major, potentially indefinite delay until the government reopens and the board can start working through its backlog. And, this creates a really challenging power dynamic. The claims examiner is essentially operating without that usual oversight, that accountability of knowing their decision could be appealed right away.
That is truly critical. You might get a decision, maybe even quickly because they're working, but if it's the wrong decision, the system for fighting it is just closed indefinitely.
That's the reality of it.
Okay, let's zoom in on some specific agencies because you mentioned it earlier. The situation isn't the same for everyone. It really depends on who signs your paycheck, right?
Mm-hmm.
The sources broke down a few key examples.
Yeah, definitely different scenarios. We can start with maybe the most insulated group, the USPS, the Postal Service.
Right, they're different.
Very different. They are not part of the shutdown at all. The Postal Service is financially independent, funded by its own revenue from postage and services, not by annual congressional appropriations. So for USPS employees, it's entirely business as usual. Operations continue, and their OWCP claims are handled just like always. And it's worth remembering, something like 40% of all FECA benefit payments go to postal employees. So their stability is actually a huge factor in the overall health of that FECA fund.
Okay, so postal workers are largely unaffected by this specific issue. Now, what about the other end of the spectrum? Those accepted workers forced to work without pay.
Right, that would be agencies like TSA and BOP, the Transportation Security Administration, and the Bureau of Prisons. Their employees are deemed essential airport screeners, correctional officers they must work, but without pay during the shutdown.
So what about their injury claims?
They still have all the same FECA rights. They can file claims, get medical care paid for eventually, but they're the ones most likely to face that immediate continuation of pay, COP gap we talked about earlier.
Because their agency can't issue the check.
Exactly. So an injured TSA officer or a BOP correctional officer needs to be prepared, if they're taken off duty due to a work injury, to immediately file that Form CA-7 requesting wage loss compensation from OWCP. They just can't count on their agency being able to cut that full COP salary check right away.
Got it. So file the CA-7 fast is the advice there.
Absolutely. Then there's the IRS. They had a bit of a unique situation starting out.
How so?
Well, because of supplemental funding they got from the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act, the IRS actually had enough money to keep operating normally for at least the first 5 business days of the shutdown.
Ah, so they had a cushion.
A temporary cushion, yes, before potentially starting mass furloughs if the shutdown continued beyond that. But the key point for injured IRS workers is this. Regardless of whether they were furloughed later or not, any existing OWCP claims they have are secure. Payments for those existing claims will continue without interruption, thanks again to that separate, stable FECA fund.
Okay, so this really all seems to boil down to one core idea. The money itself, the FECA fund, is secure. But the administrative pathways, communication, agency support, appeals are seriously strained or even broken.
That's a perfect summary.
So given that, you can't easily call someone, HR support at your agency might be furloughed and the appeals board is closed, what is the single most important practical thing an injured worker needs to focus on right now?
It is 100% about strong, meticulous medical documentation. You absolutely have to operate under the assumption that you won't be able to easily reach the claims examiner to clarify things, and critically, that you won't be able to appeal their initial decision for potentially weeks or months. So your paperwork, especially the medical evidence, it just has to be flawless from the get-go.
Flawless how? What does that mean practically?
It means getting detailed reports from your doctor. Reports that explicitly, clearly link the diagnosed condition directly back to the specific work incident or exposure. It needs objective findings, things the doctor can measure or see, not just what you report feeling. And it needs a clear treatment plan that justifies every step of the care recommended.
So the paperwork has to make the case entirely on its own.
Precisely. When agency HR support might be unavailable and that direct line to the examiner is cut off, that level of detailed, objective documentation becomes your primary shield. It's what prevents a claim from being rejected or stalled in limbo.
That documentation is basically the bridge over the shutdown chaos.
It really is. And the sources mentioned support services that specialize in this area, for example, Restore Muscle and Joint Clinics. They help federal workers in Kansas City and St. Louis. Services like that can help bridge the gap. They know the forms, the CA-1, CA-2, the CA-7 for wage loss, the crucial CA-17 duty status reports that doctors fill out. They help ensure everything is filed correctly and, most importantly, backed by solid medical evidence.
Having that expert help could really reduce stress and prevent easily avoidable claim problems, especially now.
Absolutely. Having complete, accurate medical evidence submitted right up front drastically cuts the chance of your claim getting stuck when you literally can't pick up the phone and talk to the person making the decision.
Okay, so let's recap the main message for everyone listening. The good news. The actual foundation of your OWCP claim, the money in the FECA fund, it's secure. It's protected from the shutdown politics. The bad news. The bureaucracy you need to navigate getting help, asking questions, appealing bad decisions that severely strain, or in the case of appeals, completely shut down.
Exactly right. And, the shutdown itself, it's almost a perfect, if painful, illustration of how statutory funding like that permanent FECA fund can protect a critical safety net, even when the discretionary parts of the government grind to a halt. It shows the system's robustness in that core way.
But the flip side is that vulnerability you highlighted. With the USPS appeals board shut down, injured workers literally lose their right to challenge a decision they think is wrong, possibly for months. When that whole appeals mechanism just vanishes, how does that silence change the immediate power dynamic between the claimant trying to get benefits and the examiner making the call? What should an injured worker really understand about the immense importance of getting that initial claim decision right, knowing there's no quick way to fight it if it goes wrong? That's really something to think about, isn't it?
It absolutely is. The absence of that appeals route really transforms the whole initial decision process. It's not just about getting approved anymore. It's about getting approved based on evidence so strong it doesn't need an appeal. It means that meticulous, unassailable documentation filed correctly, completely, right from the start, it stops being just, best practice. During a shutdown like this, it becomes the only real strategy. It's your shield, your advocate, and maybe your only recourse for the foreseeable future.
A crucial point to end on. Thanks for joining us for this very important deep dive into a complex situation. We'll see.